So the light blue is cerulean or any light blue you have. Please add a drop of water and make it a little bit runny. Bring it into the place that like this. We call it premix. So we make it prepare ready. And now clean my brush with water. And the other part, I would like to make some darker blue, bluey green like this. This is the darker one. I have another dark blue and it's ultramarine blue. You can go with any dark blue you have. It can be cobalt, it can be ultramarine, it can be Prussian blue, any dark blue you have. Take some with the water, bring it here. And one thing about watercolor we need to know is we most of the time not to use any white color into that. If you see this cloud on top of my sky, I didn't add any white color. I just used the napkin. Use the napkin and try to make it after I wet the paper. So we use more water into the paint to make our paint really light, and we use less water into the paint and we make more pigment to help our paint get darker. So just in watercolor, just play with the amount of water. Okay, this is ready for here. I just go with the dark blue. Even if you like, you can add green into that. Any green you have. You can go with sap green, hooker green, viridian green. So I add just a bit green to make this dark tone. And make it ready. Again, clean my brush. Now I would like to have lighter green. As I mentioned, if you don't have light green, like just around it, and not make it really wet, just a little bit. As we can start wet our surface. So a little bit wet. And now I start with the light blue color. Randomly, I move on my brush. I try to use bigger brush. It's more easy to handle hold the paper. So I adding very easily add some blue color, light blue color on top of my paper. And I'm not worried about shape of my cloud. I just adding the blue. And bring it a little bit down. And I have now a soft napkin on my hand. So my paper is still wet. I shape my napkin. And then try to lift up some paint like this to make the cloud. And make sure just lift up. So add napkin on top and then lift up. Not rub it. If you rub the napkin, you can damage your paper. Just like that, lift up some paint, and it's better your napkin be clean. Or even I would like to add a little bit darkness here, so I use more blue color. And then lift up. So I don't want to let my paper dry. I switch to my darker green. And I try to cover around my cottage. Please make sure not to go inside that. It's okay to use watery brush or thirsty brush and adding some tone. This time we don't want to add a lots of water into our paint. It's better to use less water to have a darkness. And we would like to use some salt to see what happened. So the paper is already wet. So I add this wet color on top. Clean my brush, I switch to lighter green. Add some stroke here. You see, randomly I just add some stroke. And bring it like a bunch of bushes or grass on top. I do everything at the same time because I want to add salt on top. So everything is wet. Timing for salt is important. Sometimes when it's really wet, it doesn't give us a good result. Sometimes when it's dry, again, doesn't give us a good result. So just a bit I wait. Make this part a little bit wet because my paper is 100% cotton and it's still wet. If yours is 25, so when it's wet, take some salt like that in your hand, and then take some very gently spread on top of your green color of the grass on top. Just spread here, and then leave it everything get dry. It takes time. It takes really time, but take some salt. The good time is when it's not paper really wet and not really dry. Something in between is a good time for adding salt on top. And salt can absorb paint and water, and then you can see the techniques that happen. It takes really time. We leave it like that. We don't touch it anymore. And it depends on the size of the salt that you use. Sometimes the big one give you another result, the smaller one another. So everything can affect. This is lighter green. And I would like to have darker tone as well. I add this green. It can be hooker green. Mine is hooker green actually. Or any green you have, it's okay to bring. Even for different tone, and I make a little bit more light and dark green. Something in between. And or even we can use brown to make our green warmer. So I use brown as well. I just go with the separate of each color. And when I bring to my paper, I use one by one. For the first layer, it's okay to go watery. So I add more water base. Now I don't want to let it dry. I have salt beside me again, just a tiny bit. I use here, near the cottage, just a bit near the cottage. Take some. It's a good time. It's a wet, but not runny. I add a tiny bit. Spread my salt here to see what happened. And even here I have, under the tree, we have some effect of salt. Add drop of water. Make blue a little lighter. Even we can add a tiny bit green into that. Okay, clean your brush. Then please wet the surface that you would like to add the water, but make sure not touch the other color. We need to be gently around that. Even with the tip of your brush, you can move on and really close to them. Keep a little bit of space, white between the grass and the water. Because if I move on into those, sometimes with the paper, not whole the part, just half of it. Because we need to keep this part to work later. Now I start with the blue. Very gently I move on. Even I keep some part white as a paper. I move on to add some stroke as a blue, light blue color everywhere. And then you can separate it by line even. I don't want to let it dry, so I back to green. I bring some greeny feeling here for the reflection. Clean my brush. I have a little darker blue, so less water this time, more pigment. Interested to and add the green into the blue to reduce the sharp blue color. Yeah. Control it with napkin to reduce the amount of water. And then draw some line as a wave, like a broken line. And it's better this color be have actually less water into your hair, into the hair of your brush. More pigment, very less water. Because I would like to help it sit on top of the water base, my lake. So I use very less water and use more pigment. Okay, this time I don't want to add water on top of my paper. I just go with watery brush. So the technique is wet on dry. First, I start with yellow, which is lighter color. I take my yellow, it should be watery. Oops. And I randomly add here some yellow color. I don't pay attention about any shape of flower. Just watery brush, I will add some yellow like that here randomly. Clean your brush, switch to orange. Heavy paint, less water. Bring some orange between your yellow. Like that. And now switch to your red. Bring some red into your orange and yellow and randomly add some red in between. So we don't make one by one the flowers. We just bring some brush stroke on top of our painting to make a colorful space here. And then clean your brush, switch to your pink color or dark pink. Less water, more pigment. Add some dark pink in between. Or even any color you like. You can less or add more. And purple. I bring some tone of the purple. And I make sure not to lose some of them. I try to keep all the color that I add and not make them dirty. But in between, I will bring some purple. Even you can bring a little bit up some of them. Into the green part. And I don't want to let the warm color of my landscapes, sorry, flowers get dry. I would like to switch to my salt. Very gently spread some salt everywhere. It's better not very wet, not very dry, between them. You can use salt for the edges more than center. Because it suddenly happened and you have no idea what happened about your painting. And move on with a smaller brush and take some green. I would like to make my green a little bit warmer, so I add the brown and blue into that. And just add some tone here on the bottom part as a grass. Light green and dark green. I try my best not to touch any salt. So far, so good. Great. About the watercolor, it's so interesting. Even if you copy from your painting, two paintings does not look like each other exactly. So, for example, and depend on what happened with the material that you work. For example, here on these bushes and flowers is not exactly similar to this one. So we will need to let it completely dry. It's still wet. And now I would like to, because I see here it's so much great. We make it and we make this part too, but still we need some darkness to bring around the cottage, and we need to make this tree. So I would like, first of all, get rid of the salt. So we need a napkin to clean the surface. Make sure your surface should be completely dry. I will clean napkin, the salt from the surface of your painting. Sometimes it's stick and you need to use your hand to make it clean. Oops. I just clean here till the top part, not here. The flowers are still need more work. Here's some more details I need to add, not much. So I have small brush. First of all, I would like to add some darkness around the cottage and more bluey tones. So I go with cerulean, not cerulean, what's this? Ultramarine blue. Ultramarine is dark blue. And I would like to mix with the brown and a little bit green I add. So this is dark. I use very less water because this is the second layer. And for second layer, I would like to make dark color, so I use very less water. Same color that I use here, but when I add it, you see the difference? Same color. But for the first layer, I add a lots of water. For this one, I use very less water. So control it. Randomly shape with the tip of bushes with the tip of a brush like the bushes, sorry. Like that. Around. Please not cover and all this light color. We need to have those light color in between. Just a tiny bit. We make these bushes on top to be visible. Like that even. Now before start trunk of trees and branch, I prefer to add some stroke as a leaves to make the tree. Then I will add trunk of tree. So I go with the green color, hooker green. Just I try to add some darkness like this as a tree. Even you can go with a little blue. Clean your brush, even yellow ochre. I don't want to lose this beautiful movement and technique that salt give me. Just a bit, I will come around. Or you can make this darkness and again add the salt on top. For example, I can help this darkness add here. And now a little bit salt, just a tiny bit I will add here on this section. And let it dry. Now with smaller brush and pointy brush, we will make the trunk of trees with dark brown color. If you don't have any dark brown, you can mix your brown with blue and reach the dark value. This is really dark and less water. So now I go with the small brush. So my trunk of tree, very gently, I touch my paper to shape the trees. Two trees can beside each other. I would like to make. Try my best not touch the surface which is really wet. And when I want to go as a branch, it should be used tip of brush to use a narrow line. Tip of brush, it's so helpful to draw some line as a really tiny and narrow. And you can use your small finger to put it on a table or paper to control it. Now I would like to add some light and dark color for my flowers here. A little bit more. I need, first of all, the green color. I prefer to add the green into the blue and brown. Not everywhere, just some as a line, make this grass separate like that. Just the shape of grass. Randomly add it here.